Vlad the Impaler, the real Dracula. Part 1, The Boy of the Dragon. The winter winds rolled over the Carpathian Mountains like wolves in a pack, howling, snapping, gnawing at the black pines. Snow lay heavy on the ridges of Wallachia, cloaking villages in silence broken only by the chiming of church bells and the crackle of hearth fires. And within one such village, a child was born who would one day be remembered not for warmth or silence, but for screams carried on that same winter wind. His name was Vlad, son of Vlad Dracula, and to his enemies he would become known as Teeps the Impaler. The boy's father belonged to the Order of the Dragon, sworn to defend Christendom against the encroaching Ottomans. This order gave him the surname Dracula, meaning dragon, and thus his sons were called Draculesti, the sons of the dragon. But in the tongues of peasants, Dracula also meant demon, devil. Already, whispers foreshadowed the mingling of myth and man that would cling to Vlad all his life. Childhood in Wallachia was not a gentle one. Vlad and his younger brother Radu were schooled in the ways of sword and saddle early. They practiced riding horses until thighs burned raw, wielding blades until palms blistered. When their father sent them to the Ottoman court as hostages, a guarantee of his loyalty, Vlad learned that the world was not merely harsh but treacherous. In Edirne, surrounded by foreign tongues, he studied his captors as a hawk studies rabbits. He watched the janissaries drill, listened to the muezzins call across the rooftops, and endured the indignity of being a pawn in the Sultan's game. His younger brother Radu grew soft there, enamored of silks and scents, whispering in Turkish to companions. Vlad did not. He carved his hatred into himself as if etching it upon bone. One story tells that he learned cruelty from his captors, that he saw the impalements and punishments meted out by Ottoman guards and made them his own. Another claims it was always within him, a seed that simply needed water. Whatever the truth, by the time Vlad returned to Wallachia, the boy was no longer only the son of the dragon. He was a young wolf sharpening his teeth. The land he returned to was no kingdom of peace but a chessboard of shifting loyalties. Boyars, the nobles of Wallachia, plotted and betrayed with a regularity that made treason seem tradition. Hungarians on one side, Ottomans on the other, all demanded fealty. His father was murdered, some say betrayed by these same boyars. His elder brother was blinded with hot iron and buried alive. Vlad never forgot this. The throne of Wallachia was a crown of thorns. To claim it meant endless war, not just with foreign empires but with the nobles beneath one's feet. Vlad seized it once, lost it, reclaimed it again with fire and blood. Each time he returned, he came with sharper claws. It is here, in the mid-15th century, that the legends sharpen like knives. For Vlad ruled by terror, and terror was a language all understood. His punishments were not subtle. He impaled thieves, beggars, deserters, traitors, envoys, anyone who defied him. Some he skewered through the abdomen, others through the chest, and the unlucky through the anus, the stake emerging at shoulder, throat, or mouth. Victims could writhe for hours, even days, before death arrived. The forest outside Targovist grew thick not with pines but with bodies swaying on poles. Foreign travelers spoke of the forest of the impaled, a warning written in flesh to any who dared oppose him. But cruelty was not mindless. It was deliberate, political. Vlad knew that fear could defend borders as surely as walls. When the Ottomans advanced into his territory, they found villages stripped bare, wells poisoned, fields burned, and before them, rows upon rows of stakes with bodies impaled, 20,000 strong by some accounts. The Sultan himself, hardened by war, turned back at the sight. Yet among his people Vlad was not merely feared but, by some, respected. For his punishments fell upon nobles as much as peasants. The boyars who had betrayed his father found themselves impaled in turn. The corrupt were slaughtered, thieves hunted down. In a land strangled by chaos, his cruelty brought a perverse kind of order. A merchant might walk through Wallachia with gold in hand, knowing none would dare touch him for fear of Vlad's stakes. Still, blood breeds legend, and legends grow fangs. The Saxon merchants who hated him carried tales westward. They spoke of a prince who dined among the impaled, dipping bread into their blood. They described him as a monster, a vampire before the word was born into literature. They painted him as not only cruel but inhuman, a demon in man's form. These were exaggerations, yet exaggerations fed the myth, and the myth of Dracula was born. And so Vlad lived as both man and shadow, flesh and symbol. To his enemies he was the devil of Wallachia. To his subjects he was both protector and executioner. He could be ruthless in war, cunning in diplomacy, but above all he was relentless. It is said that when envoys of the Sultan arrived and refused to remove their turbans in his presence, claiming it was their custom, Vlad nailed the turbans to their heads to ensure they would never remove them again. Another tale tells of a golden cup placed in the center of Targovist. Any man might drink from it, yet none dared steal it, for all knew the price. Whether these tales are fact or embellishment, they carried his reputation farther than his armies ever marched. In taverns across Europe, travelers whispered of the Impaler prince, the devil's son, the man who ruled by fear and iron stake. And always, the Carpathian winds carried the stories, howling as they passed through forests of the dead. Vlad the Impaler, the real Dracula. Part 2, The Forest of the Impaled. The year was 1462, and the air in Wallachia carried the heavy scent of ash. Fields lay scorched, villages abandoned, livestock slaughtered or driven into the mountains. Vlad had ordered it so, for he knew the might of the Ottoman Empire was descending upon him, and to fight Mehmed the Conqueror, the Sultan who had taken Constantinople, was no small matter. The boyars whispered that Vlad was mad, that no man could resist the armies of the crescent moon. But Vlad was not mad, he was calculating. He could not defeat Mehmed's armies in open battle, for they were vast, disciplined, endless as the sea. But he could starve them, harry them, strike like a wolf in the night and vanish into the forest. It was war not of knights and banners but of shadows and terror. And terror was a weapon Vlad wielded better than any sword. When Mehmed's forces marched through Wallachia, they found desolation. Wells poisoned, villages aflame, supplies vanished. They found peasants fleeing into the hills, leaving only silence behind them. And they found bodies, so many bodies. Some lay butchered in fields, others hanged in ruined barns. But most were displayed upon stakes, tall wooden poles sharpened to a cruel point, the corpses of men, women, even children slowly rotting in the sun. It is said that when Mehmed reached the outskirts of Targovist, he beheld a sight that froze even his seasoned heart. Before the city stood a forest unlike any other, 20,000 corpses impaled, row upon row, stretching farther than the eye could see. Some leaned lifelessly forward, heads bowed. Others had decayed to bone, blackened rags flapping in the wind. Ravens circled overhead, pecking at the remains. The stench was thick enough to choke the lungs. The Ottoman chroniclers recorded this horror with a mixture of disgust and awe. They called it the Forest of the Impaled, and it burned itself into memory. Mehmed had faced sieges, plagues, rebellions, but this was something else. This was not merely war. This was theater. A message written not in ink but in blood. Here rules Vlad Dracula, and here you will find only death. The Sultan's army faltered. Some refused to advance further, claiming no land so cursed was worth the march. Mehmed, who had broken empires, turned his host back toward Constantinople, leaving Wallachia scarred but unbowed. Vlad had won not with armies but with fear itself. But victory carried a cost. His land was ravaged, his people exhausted, and his enemies were many. The boyars, ever plotting, whispered to Matthias Corvinus, the king of Hungary, that Vlad was too dangerous, too cruel, a monster even among Christians. Matthias, eager to weaken his neighbor, arrested Vlad and held him captive. Imprisonment did not tame him. In the fortress of Visegrad, where he was kept, the guards soon whispered their own tales. Some said he amused himself by impaling rats and birds, fashioning tiny stakes from splinters of wood. Others claimed he would sit in silence for hours, eyes fixed on a single point, as if replaying the screams of his victims in his mind. And yet, here lies the contradiction that confounds historians. Vlad was not without admirers. Letters from his time in captivity reveal that some nobles respected him as a man of discipline, a ruler who had brought order to chaos. His cruelty was undeniable, but so too was his strength. Even in chains, he commanded a strange reverence. After years in confinement, Matthias released him, seeing once more a use for the Impaler against the Ottomans. Vlad returned to Wallachia, older now, tempered not softened. His reign was shorter this time, but no less fierce. He sought to reclaim his throne, to reforge his name in fire and terror. The Saxons, who had long despised him, spread ever more grotesque tales. They claimed he boiled men alive, mutilated women, cut off limbs, and left corpses to rot where dogs might gnaw them. They painted him as a monster feeding on human blood, a devil wearing the face of a man. Pamphlets circulated in Germany, illustrated with woodcuts of Dracula feasting among impaled bodies, raising a goblet in macabre toast. Whether these were propaganda or glimpses of truth, they shaped his legend as surely as the stakes had shaped his land. The irony is sharp. Those who sought to destroy his reputation ensured instead that it would live forever. For in the eyes of Europe, Vlad was no longer merely a prince of Wallachia. He had become something larger, a symbol of cruelty, a dark mirror of power. And through these tales, a seed was planted. Centuries later, when a certain Irish writer sought inspiration for a vampire count, he would find in the Saxon pamphlets a name that still dripped with dread: Dracula. But Vlad's story did not end in legend. It ended in blood, as all his stories did. In 1476, he returned once more to the battlefield. Allies turned to enemies, friends to traitors, the pattern of his life. Ambushed near Bucharest, he was slain, his head severed from his shoulders and sent to the Sultan in Constantinople as proof. Some say his body was buried at Snagov Monastery, though no grave has ever been found. Others whisper he rose from the earth, for how could death claim the Impaler? What is certain is this: the man died, but the myth endured. His head may have rotted, his bones scattered, but his name lived on in fear, in ink, in whispered tales around the hearth. The peasants of Wallachia remembered him not as a vampire but as a ruler who punished the corrupt and protected his land with merciless strength. The Saxons remembered him as a butcher who reveled in blood. The Ottomans remembered him as the prince who made even sultans hesitate. And Europe remembered him as Dracula, the man who dined with the dead, whose shadow still stretches across centuries. The Carpathian winds still howl his name: Vlad, Dracula, Teeps, the Impaler. And in the silence after the howl, one can almost hear the faint creak of wood, the moan of the dying, the eternal forest of the impaled.